The scientific origin of astrology, and I'm talking about ancient Greek astrology here, which was developed by philosophers and mathematicians that we still know to this day, such as Pythagoras and Plato. I am not talking about horoscope predictions as you find them in magazines or on commercial platforms. I'm talking about astrology as it was developed originally in the Greek ancient astrology. Astrology and astronomy used to be a merged field up until the 18th century. Astrology emerged around exactly the same time as astronomy, mathematics, medicine, and philosophy. And for centuries, it has been considered as a science. Only around the 18th century, when the scientific revolution or the age of enlightenment started, which is when we started to consider science as something of reason, where we need empirical evidence, astrology branched off from astronomy to become a pseudoscience due to the lack of empirical evidence. Note that we're talking about human behavior here, something incredibly challenging to measure. Because it's now been considered a pseudoscience for so long, there hasn't been a lot of research done on it, nor has there been any attempt to generate more empirical evidence. Today, I want to explain to you exactly how astrology works according to the ancient Greek astrology. I also want you to understand how complex astrology is. Of course, not everyone in the same month has the same personality. There is much more to astrology than just the sun sign. There is a complex astrological chart for each individual. So I want to explain to you exactly how these charts work and what the most important properties are so that you can look up your own astrological chart and form your own opinions on whether it's true for you. And we must never forget the nature-nurture. The way I view astrology as a sort of fundamental basis for personality tendencies. It is obviously never going to decide who you truly are. This is also based on your surroundings, your parents, your circumstances, where you grew up. Similarly to the nature-nurture dilemma. Astrology is really an energy, personality tendencies. And it doesn't fully define your behavior at all times, but it does show a correlation with how you handle emotions, how you handle situations, or things that you enjoy doing, having certain placements in your chart. My name is Davy. I am a PhD student in chemical engineering at the University of Cambridge. And in my free time, I love to study anything related to law of attraction, spirituality, the mind. And I've been super fascinated by astrology for a few years now. Always grew up being super skeptical, how is it possible for the stars to decide a personality? Only when I started to research it properly, roughly 3 years ago, is when my belief grew. Because astrology is actually super complex and a lot of people actually don't know all the details before they form an opinion or judgment whether they consider it to be true. And I want to give you insight today into the complexity of it. I've been researching all the meanings of all the different parts of the chart, and I'll give you a brief summary of that today. First part of the video, I'll explain why I think astrology is true. Then I will explain how the astrological chart works. How do I use astrology in my life? A lot of people don't believe in astrology because they don't actually know how it works. It is very complex. Today, I want to give you an insight into how to actually read an astrology chart from the scientific point of view where it originated from, which is the Greek ancient astrology. Analogy that I see with the quantum field theory, which I explained in my previous video. In the quantum field theory, we know about quantum entanglement, which means that different quantum fields are related to each other. So when we had our atoms and the protons with the electrons circulating around the protons, if we measure something about the proton, we can find out information about the electrons that circulate around the protons. This is what we call quantum entanglement. Now, I think in the same way, in our solar system, the planets are revolving around the sun, but these planets are all correlated. Their gravitational forces are also in entanglement, just as on an atomic scale, there is an entanglement of masses that collaborate and that can influence each other, which means we can make measurements on the Earth about other planets. To derive your astrological chart, which you can do online on, for example, AstroCharts or cafeastrology.com, what happens is you have your exact geolocation of where you're born and the time where you're born. There is a perpendicular line that then measures exactly where all of the planets are, in which sign they lie. So It's not just your sun sign. You have your moon sign, you have your Mercury, you have your Venus, and actually every planet that we have in our solar system is then located in a sign. And all of these planets have a different impact on personality or behavior. I will only go over the 6 most important ones that I think define your personality and your behavior most. So first of all, you have your sun sign, which is the month you're born in. This is your main sign, which decides your ego, your basic personality traits, and your consciousness. Now you have your moon sign, which by the way changes every 2 weeks, which is related to your subconscious, your emotions, your instincts, your habits, and your moods. Then another important planet is your Mercury sign. It's the way you communicate. It's the way your mind works, your intellect, your reason. Then the 4th important planet is Venus. Venus is what you're attracted to, what you love. It's related to relationships. Then you have your Mars, which is what drives you, what motivates you, what gives you courage and passion. And the final important thing to consider is the ascendant, which changes every 2 hours, by the way. So if you don't know the exact time of when you're born, the ascendant might not be exactly correct. But the ascendant is sort of your superficial personality, the way you come across to people if you just met them. So let me give you my chart as an example so that you can generate your own. So my sun is in Cancer. Again, sun is your basic personality. Cancers are very emotional, very empathic, very loving, intuitive, and protective. And on the flip side, when this goes to the extremes, they can be over emotional, moody, clingy. Every sign has positive and negative sides, and whether the person is in their healthy, confident energy determines which side comes to expression, right? Then I have my moon in Libra. Again, the moon determines your subconscious or your emotions. Libra is very diplomatic, romantic, charming, sociable, and on the flip side, indecisive, changeable, and gullible. Mercury, which is the way you communicate, is in Leo. Leo is quite a fierce sign, quite a spotlight sign, a bit more dominant, a bit more confident. Perhaps that's interesting in terms of why I started a YouTube channel. My communication is quite fierce. Finally, I have my Venus, which is what you love or you're attracted to, and my Mars, which is what drives you in Gemini. Both of them. Gemini is very communicative, adaptable, likes change, can be quite impulsive, can be also quite unreliable. And it's a very intellectual, inquisitive energy. One thing to remember when it comes to also compatibility. There are water signs, earth signs, fire signs, and air signs. The water signs are known to be more emotional and empathic. This is Pisces, Cancer, Scorpio. The earth signs are known to be more practical, more related to the earth, more related to planning, or more related to the physical aspects of life, which is Virgo, Taurus, and Capricorn. Capricorn is really the entrepreneur of the signs. Taurus can be very sensitive as well, by the way, but they're also less mystical. Of all the signs, I think the water signs are known to be the more spiritual ones, because with the emotions also comes the intuition, and they believe more in mystical things. Now you have the fire signs, which is Leo, Aries, and Sagittarius. Fire means action. Fire means a bit more dominance, or a bit more knowing what they want. And again, not if this is your sun sign, but you might have other placements that calm the fire down. So this is important to study as well in your chart. Do I have balancing of energies? And the final category is air signs. That is Gemini, Aquarius, and Libra. Air is related to communication, mind, and the intellect. So that is basically the primary focus of these signs. This is really what drives them. And again, as I said, the balancing in your chart is really important as well. How many fire placements, how many water placements, how many air placements. If you have a lot of water placements, you are very, very emotional. Me, for example, I have my sun in Cancer, which is a water sign, but my moon is in Libra, which is an air sign. So there's a sort of balancing. Now I also have fire in my chart, which is you get a different combination of different sort of interests and behaviors. Now, if you have all 3 placements, sun, moon, and ascendant, all in a water sign, or all in an air sign, or all in an earth sign, that energy becomes intensified. So you can assume that, most of your behavioral tendencies will align with what we know of water signs, air signs, or whatever the example was that links to you. Now, what I want you to understand about all of these signs, I am not a pure Cancer. I am not a pure Libra. I'm not a pure Gemini. I'm not pure of anything, and neither are you. You are a complex combination of different sides, of different signs that come into expression at different times. So now that you understand the full chart, you can understand that maybe when you read things about your sun sign online, not all of it resonates. Well, that's because you need to look at the complete astrological chart. You need to integrate all of these signs and connect the different aspects of your personality to different signs to fully get an understanding of someone's behavior or personal tendencies. It doesn't, again, define who I am in any case. It explains to me what tendencies I might have when it comes to my emotions or when it comes to the way I handle situations in life. I want you also to understand every sign has good and bad sides. There are positive traits and negative traits associated to every side. So no sign is good or bad. There are a lot of rumors going around, oh, that's a good sign. Now, there is actually more to the chart. There are more planets. They're a bit less specific. Some of these planets are generational, which means they change every year. So a whole year falls under that energy, which makes it less specific to your personality, right? And then there's another aspect to the chart, which is the houses. So each planet doesn't only lie in a sign, it also lies in a house. And as the sign decides the personal traits, the houses decide what aspect in your life does it come most to expression. So there are 3 layers to the chart. You have the planets that decide what aspect of your personality. Then you have the signs that decide what personality traits are associated with that. And then you have the houses, the 3rd layer, which is in what aspect of your life does this come back the most. So there are 3 layers to the chart. I'll show an image of the houses over here. I won't go into full detail of what each of my houses are, but I hope that you can now understand a little bit of the gist of it, of how complex a chart is and how each individual has a very unique own chart, which also makes sense because every person is also quite different. Unless you're maybe a twin or a triplet. How do I use astrology in my life? I do tend to ask people their sign, and do I judge people on their sign? Am I going to form prejudged or biased opinions on them? Never. I will never in my life use astrology or signs to be like, oh, I do want to be friends with you, or I do not want you in my life. Every person, individual, is unique. And every sign has good and bad sides. So I will never make a judgment in that way. Of an Aries or a Leo, I will expect them to be quite confident and quite putting themselves in the center of attention. And that is just the tendencies they have. There's nothing wrong with that. It just helps me understand people better. I will expect a Virgo to be very practical, very planny, very attached to earth and practical matters. That is their tendency. It gives me a better understanding of why people behave in a certain way. And if anything, it makes me judge them less, because I cannot expect from a non-Cancer or a non-water sign to sometimes understand my emotions to the depth that I would like. That's just the way we are programmed a little bit. So you really need to take the astrological chart into consideration as a whole and see how these different aspects come back in which part of your personality, and if there is balancing of energies as well that might tone down certain effects or intensify certain effects, and only use it to understand people better in order to judge them less. I'll never use astrology to make prejudgment or bias my opinion of someone before I know them. I don't think astrology should ever be used in that way, because that would just be unfair. Then you would disacknowledge our humanity and our, again, the nature-nurture dilemma. You would disacknowledge an aspect of someone that is just basically who they are based on what they've been through. And every sign has good and bad sides. So you never truly know whether that person leans more towards the good sides of their astrological sign or the bad sides of their astrological sign. Whatever good and bad means anyway. But it's all about compatibility, isn't it? There's nothing good or bad about anything. That is my first video that I wanted to make on astrology. Let me know in the comments what you think of it. I hope you got anything out of it and that you now have a little bit of a deeper understanding of what astrology truly is. If you like this video, leave me a like and subscribe to my channel. I would really, really love that. And I would also love to see you in my next video. Sending you my love.